Hello, everybody. Today we have a special guest. We have somebody that is here that is going to share their journey with you and how they have found healing and hope in the midst of trauma. And we're going to be talking a little bit about grief. And I'm really excited to have her today and for her to go ahead and introduce herself. And as everybody's joining in, if you could go ahead and drop in the comments. Say hello, let us know where you're watching from, and we are looking forward to our conversation today. So River, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm River Outlaw. Have to excuse me. I'm in Colorado, and the weather's been a little crazy up here, so lots of allergy stuff. I have 5 kids, ranging in age from 27 to 10. I have a master's degree from Denver Seminary with an emphasis in counseling and an undergrad in rhetoric. Formerly a vineyard pastor and have worked in nonprofits, and then also a stint as a military wife.
Yes, and you were recently the author of the article that people read on our blog that we share on our website in May as well, and that was really amazing. So y'all can check that out on the blog if you want to hear more of her story. And so yes, I'm looking forward to getting started today. So if y'all have any questions too, River is completely open to that. If you want to ask questions about her journey, she's also a life coach. So I will be dropping a link in the comments to be able to connect with her if you have any more questions for her personally afterwards. And we are praying that today's conversation touches you and encourages you and helps you see how the grieving process works and how this looks different for everybody, a journey of overcoming. And so thank you for coming, River, today and being willing to share with us. So, let's get started. Could you share maybe a little bit of your journey and your background of the things that you've walked through?
So I come from a really rough raising, moved out really early. I moved out at 14, grew up with an addict mom, and so felt like it was more stable for me to get out and work a job and pay my own bills rather than trust somebody to do that for me, or be shuffled from house to house. So my most consistent home life was with my great grandmother. So that's I took my family name after I was divorced, but I got married really early. I got married at 15 and then graduated school early, and then had my first 3 kids. So I call those my first batch. So those are my 3 older kiddos. And then went to pursue my degree, which was in rhetoric and writing with marketing and management emphasis in graphic design. And then life kind of went in a different direction. We were doing some youth ministry, and just getting married that young was just really not in a great space. So we chose to go separate ways in my late almost 30s. I was like 29, I think. And then I met who I thought was going to be my life partner and my soulmate. And he was a military guy in special forces. And initially I was very reticent. They had a not great reputation in our town. And he was a Christ follower. So he said all the right things and he did all the right made all the right moves to woo me and to pursue me. And I hadn't really ever had that before. And I had abuse in my childhood, but as far as in an intimate relationship, that was very foreign to me. And so I had no sense of red flags. And I was very open to my, I had been in youth ministry. I had worked in outreach. And so there were people in my life that could speak into what their thoughts were on this dynamic. And, I had really struggled after my divorce. So I had kind of swayed away from the faith and I was just in the process of coming back. And it was interesting because everybody felt like his talking about marriage within 4 months was like, oh, that makes sense. You've both been married before, that, whatever. And I just had all these alarms going off. But I had never been here before. And on this surface, everything looked great. He was educated. He was a Christ follower. Like all of these things seemed to indicate that that this was great. He reflected back to me all of my passions and what was valuable to me, even pursued, my kids and being a stepdad. And so, even though I was really protective about that, but it went really fast. It went really fast. And so, that whole idea of being swept off your feet, I have clinical words for all these things now. Like now I know better. Yes. But at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. And no one in my community had any reference point for what was happening. And because we both, we were, honestly, he was way more about Jesus at that time than I was. I had really gone through what I call a year in the dark, where I had just wrestled with, I felt like I had tried to do everything I was supposed to do, and my first marriage had just failed. And most of it had to do with gender roles, and that I didn't match the mold of the female in the Christian dynamic that I was supposed to be. And then I went to seminary and found out that I don't have to. Yeah. So, so it was like, woo. So that had really been like a really rough time. And we had just been so young. I was 15, he was 17. We were married almost 15 years. I'm a bulldog when I commit to something. And it really wasn't until it came to a place of being like, he's not getting to be who God has made him to be, and I'm not getting who God has made me to be. And we're in constant conflict, and I'm tearing him down one moment and he's tearing me down. And it really was a thing of like, I can't say, God was all about that, but it was, in my thought, the healthiest decision I could possibly make for both of us. Yes. And we still have a good relationship. My kids had a good relationship with him. So I had never had this intense, like, dating and then wrapped up in love affair kind of experience. I'd been in love forever. And so when I met my husband, who became my assailant, I really didn't have a reference point for what we would now call red flags. I'm a tough cookie. I never thought that, I was raised, I didn't back down. I grew up as like the white girl and in lots of, Black and brown communities. And you stood up for yourself or nobody would respect you. And so that's where I came from. So then to, be in a relationship with this very intense guy who, made me feel like I was all that in a bag of chips was intoxicating, to be honest. And it was within, I was in one state, and we would then move to where he was stationed within 6 months. And I moved my kids, and that was when the veil really lifted. And all of a sudden there were little things of like shoving into me and, jerking keys out of my hand or squeezing my hand really tight when I said something that wasn't liked. But at that point, I felt stuck. I had moved my kids across the country. I had made a commitment, and I hold to those. So that's kind of where we start. That's where we get to where we are here.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all that. And I definitely think a lot of people, I know I can relate to that too, or do not have the same background, but when you have been so hurt, those those love bombing, even though they're red flags at the time, feel so good. Something about that love bombing feels different than any other relationship. It's soothing, it's comforting, and you become almost addicted to it. And it's just part of, I think, recognizing the trauma, within it's trying to soothe that trauma. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing that so articulately well. And thank you. And so I guess I want to get into your journey and how did you overcome all this, and how have you walked through this? And so how does one healthily begin and continue the grieving process after you realize, wow, I've been through all this? Like, how do you start processing and grieving that?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say I've overcome yet.
Yes,
I'm not for sure that will be realized this side of heaven. I'm still in court with my abuser over our children. I have complex PTSD that I wrestle with. When I have to engage with him more, it triggers nightmares. And so, we have this idea of that when we leave that person, that's going to fix it, and sometimes if there's violence involved, then that's actually what the authorities will tell us as well. And when you share children with an abuser, that's just not the reality. And so, what ended up subsequently happening with us is we, went from military, and I definitely will not say that I am the authority on speaking for a military wife by any means whatsoever. I only have a snippet of experience, enough to say that within a couple of months of being back near base, we had already I already felt like there was issues, and was very concerned, and went to his base counselor, who felt like it was very normal. And I actually left, and my abuser was like, cool, good, this is normal. And I was just devastated. I got in the car and I just melted. And he was like, we're good, right? We did it. And he was able to be so disconnected. It was just such a dissonance from what felt like normal engagement of being able to go from, in essence, bullying, whether it was verbal or emotional or physical, to playfulness and oh, we're good, right? And it just was kind of being on an emotional roller coaster constantly. So, he ended up having issues at work, ended up having some military things happen where he was relieved of that service. We went into contract work. We moved multiple times within, over our 9 years of marriage, we moved 6 times. And oftentimes it was because somebody was out to get him. And so we ended up going into ministry. I had served in ministry. That was my background. And so that's where I push. That's where I jive. And so we got into small group ministry. And, there, again, I never hid bruises. I never hid the bullying, but it was always considered something that was part of in sickness and in health, because he had been in the military. And so there was always this past. And whenever, I would talk to his family members or counselors or mentors in the church, they would be like, well, just don't let it get out of control. And so it was always very confusing to me. And I wasn't for sure where that line was. And so it wasn't until, we went into seminary, and I felt like seminary really created this boundary zone where he was under a microscope. We were both constantly engaged with our advisors and mentors. But when we came out of that, almost immediately within graduation, I went to serve in South Africa, and it was the first time I had gone to serve without him in 8 years. And while I was gone, he pursued a former affair. I did not know about that originally. It had kind of all been laid out to be this emotional thing. And I found out that was basically yes. But as soon as I came back, picking me up from the airport and everything, there was something off. His verbiage completely changed in how he was talking to me. He was already creating a narrative that gave permission for what he was doing and what he was going to ask for. So I already had a spidey sense of what's going on. And then it was when I intercepted some text messages at my dining table from a lady he was meeting with at the gym. So there were actually 2. And my kids kind of started talking about this woman. And when we actually shifted into an intensive counseling, we were in counseling from 9 a.m. in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, decided that's what we were going to do with our anniversary money, because we weren't going to make it. And I found out that in the midst of that, when we would have our break, he was going out and calling this woman for hours. So it was just so irrational to me. It just didn't make sense. I was like, we're paying $900. Why? Just divorce me already. This doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so it was just very confusing. Challenged her, called her. She was like, oh, I'm just trying to help him. The Holy Spirit. And I was like, you do know that God's not in that. Not your God. Not so, again, I've never done this before. And this was a person that, for all appearances, was a national hero.
Yeah.
Something that was on a regular basis of him needing to be given accolades. It was all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Unloaded the dishwasher, I needed to make sure I said thank you. So it went from big accolades to little accolades. And so everything was on a scorecard, super competitive with everything. I couldn't be better at him than anything, or he'd need to knock me down a little bit.
Yes.
There's just some things that, just to be honest, I'm better at. There's some things he's better at. And so that's kind of nature. But it really got to the point that at this point in our relationship, I really wanted to live under a video camera, because nothing I ever said was reliable. Like, it was always, he'd do the cop out of, I don't remember, you didn't say that didn't happen. And it would change from that morning to that evening. And so it literally got where I was like, no, really, like, we'll write it down. And so for a couple of years, we even started like, okay, well, we'll write down our arguments. And that way it'll slow it down. I don't have to worry about getting hurt. And he has time to process it. Well, then all of a sudden he found an excuse to not do that. He was like, well, it doesn't feel as sincere. And so he would be like, I felt like it would mean more if I said it to you in person. And so he found a loophole. And so while we were going through seminary and we were discussing different ethical approaches and approaches to leadership, he came out with like, oh, he's like, I'm really good at finding the loophole. I was like, yeah, no joke. No joke. So, it's just interesting, because even in the midst of this, it was like I was this external compass. It was a regular thing of coming to me and being like, well, what about this? Like, I only need the sewing kit from the store, so I just stole the thread. I only needed the thread. I didn't need all the rest. And I'm like, what? No, like, that's not how that works. Like, you just buy the whole little sewing kit, but I don't need the whole sewing kit. I just need the little, why would I do that? And I'm like, I don't know, that whole, you're a Christ follower, don't steal thing. So that was our relationship for years, is this constant him checking in, like, hey, we were taking this exam in seminary. And I kind of copied these answers. That's not that big of a deal, right? No, it's kind of a big deal. I mean, seminary. So, but the deal is what he had valued and admired in the beginning of our relationship really became what he did not want to see by the time we got, we had our second daughter. She was a surprise. That hadn't been what he wanted. And when we had our son, our relationship had really, really shifted. He had wanted a boy. He had wanted a kid. And I had not wanted any more kids. So it was very kind of much a compromise for us to do that and wanting to try to honor him. And then Bria was a post-surgery, post all that surprise. So it was really at that point when there was a lot of, like, once he got that boy, everybody else in our family, you could tell we were all demoted. And it became very much like this. Now, mind you, I had 3 older kids. I had taken care of a brother and a sister. I had, in essence, mothered 5 children and cousins by this point. And even something as simple as what we're going to do with pacifier, he would be like, well, I'm going to have to talk to the doctor about that. There was just, all of a sudden, I was demoted, and this was his son. So then when we had our daughter, like, it just escalated all this tension because there was this difference in how they were engaged. And I was like, that's not okay. And so that had all been building by the time I went to South Africa, by the time he got involved in these women. So all that had been kind of increasing. So by the time we had gone through this, it was on the last day of our counseling. And we had talked about it, and I was like, I think I'm codependent, and I think you're a narcissist. I mean, I was just straight, like, I don't know that I'm supposed to do that. I probably wasn't supposed to do that. But, I'm just a very straightforward person. And he's like, okay, yeah. And he's like, well, I want us to work. And, he's like taking it in. And he's supposed to be going out of town. And so that evening, we had agreed in therapy that I would be able to look through his phone. And so, of course, where's the first thing any intelligent woman goes to look on a phone? You go to the deleted photos. Hi. And so that's what I did. And there were things on there that shouldn't have been on there. And next thing I know, he's coming after me. And I locked myself in a closet. Anyway, he tried to choke me out. And in Colorado, that's not legal. So all of a sudden, it was taken out of my hands, and the police were involved. I thought he had broke my, I thought he had broke my thumb, and he was going out of town. So I was like, I'm gonna be left with these kiddos. I had custody of my niece at the time, and so I was like, I have to go to the hospital because he's gonna be gone, and I'm not gonna want to take all the kids to the emergency room. So, but it was August 1st of 2017, and when I walked in, I had a tank top on and shorts. And I did not realize that I was covered in bruises from my neck where he had choked me to my ankles, because I had pinned myself in the bathroom with my feet against the door because he picked locks all the time. If I wasn't ever allowed to keep the door locked. He felt controlled if I did that. So he came through the door on me and pinned me against the toilet, and all these extraneous bruises because he kept trying to get me down and kept trying to get me down. And so, he ended up claiming self-defense and all that kind of stuff. But when I went to the emergency room, they were like, what else happened? Because obviously it's not just your thumb, because I had overextended my thumb trying to push him off of me. So anyway, so that started a process of a 10-day unrequested detox of my ex, because they demand a 10-day restraining order, no contact right away. And even during that time, I was like, should I forgive him? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, it was just very, very confusing. I was still kind of in this fog of, but I love this person. And so, honestly, it was the external, secular law enforcement that stepped in. I mean, we had gone to the Smalley Institute. We had studied Gottman. We had been in all these, we had done every single thing we were supposed to do and knew all of the words, which honestly, this just gave him more ammo to speak more intelligently, to emotionally attack me. But so subsequently, what happened was a really intense legal battle. The really hard thing, and honestly, I thought that would kill me, honestly. And I cried spontaneously for days. But the week after, so I went before a judge that had not been a family law attorney. We were one of her first cases. She was a business attorney who all of a sudden was determining family law. And that did not, he was given 50% custody while he was also being charged with assault with a deadly weapon against me. And I was also ordered to give him back his military weapons. So there was no engagement between the civil court and the criminal court. The civil court the family law court kind of just did their own thing, and they're still doing their own thing. I was just in court last week, and she decided she didn't even want to read our motion. So, I'm in a state that's very favorable to the military. I'm in a state that's very father focused. And so the orders coming out of that court hearing, I was supposed to refinance my house within 6 months. I had followed him around the country for 8 years and had 5 kids, 6 at that time, because I had my niece. Like, just some of the things I was ordered to do was like, it's not even reasonable. Like, I can't do it. But I didn't know, because I didn't know what I didn't know. I had no idea. The following week, my 19-year-old, who just had her driver's license for a year, my 14-year-old went to visit their dad, and she did not come home. She was in a car crash. They were in a car crash, and I had to go get her body and bring it back from Kansas. So that was the week after my divorce. The following week was his sentencing. He had come to a plea agreement where we wouldn't go to court, so he wouldn't get a full assault charge. He would do 4 years of probation, and pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon. And I was still ordered to give him back his weapons. And 2 weeks after his sentencing, he filed his first contempt against me that I had not given him my daughter's furniture and his weapons. But the DA said I couldn't. So that was March of 2018. It was hell on earth. It was the worst experience of my life. We had his sentencing. I had to address the court because he requested to attend my daughter's memorial the next day, which was Good Friday of 2018. And so I had to give a victim statement to the court requesting that they not release him and let him go to my daughter's memorial, and why. And then the next day I spoke at Anna's memorial. And then we had Easter Sunday. So, and he was already out. He spent 72 hours in jail. Since then, I have spent 48 hours in jail for not signing on our house in time because he would not agree to help with the repairs, and I missed the deadline. And the judge wanted to make an example. And so I got to go to jail for 48 hours for missing a signing deadline. He did 72 for trying to strangle me to death. So that's how that goes.
Wow. I'm going to take a deep breath, and everybody watching, take a deep breath. Wow. That's heavy. And it's just, it feels like one loss after another. And there's so many questions I want to go into. There's so much powerful statements that you made. And then like my question is too, somebody else is saying is, wow, it's just like loss upon loss upon loss. And I'm just like listening to the Holy Spirit here, trying to figure out which direction to go with it. But I want to talk about how, I know we talked briefly too, about how you grounded yourself. How do you stay functionally sane through all this? Like, what are some things that you have done that have been able to ground you? And then I'd like to go a little bit back into some questions that I have that I feel like maybe a lot of people who are watching this may be shocked, or thinking, wow, this doesn't happen. And I think sometimes, I'm not saying this, please, of every pastor or every military person, but sometimes we idolize people and idolize certain positions that we don't believe the victims, or we don't believe this is really who they are behind the scenes. And so I like to kind of speak into that a little bit and talk about that. Like, and it's hard, especially when you combine the military aspect. I'm not saying that I know much about it all, so please correct my question if it's wrong, but how do you separate that? Because a lot of times there is that mentality of, look what they sacrificed, look what they did. You should show them mercy, but at the same time, they're hurting you and abusing you. How do you separate those two things to say, yes, what they did was great and honorable, but what they're doing now is not okay? And there's no excuse for any PTS to cause this type of behavior whatsoever under any circumstances. Abuse has happened because it's a choice. What would you say into that? I'm sorry, that's a lot.
I pulled out like 4 questions in there.
Sorry.
So,
there's a couple.
That's okay. So I'll try to. So first of all, sanity is still in question. I'm not going to give any claim to being grounded enough to stay. That was definitely because, like I said, I'm still in court. My ex just took the entirety of my parenting time as his vacation because he can't seem to find a vacation or have a vacation on his parenting time. So, I'll be in court in August, was in court last week. So, we're 5 years out. So I would not recommend that per se. But one of the things that I did discover that I've learned, like there's so much that I've learned because I had never been in court before. I had never, my first husband and I had an amicable separation. We went through a mediator. Like we were nice, like this whole dynamic was completely new to me. And to be honest, it's one of the reasons that I stayed in the relationship for as long as I did, because the idea, like it was scary to be married to my spouse, the idea of divorcing him and what society would give a pass to because I was the ex. Like all of a sudden, the contempt, the disdain, all of those things that might occur or would honestly our society kind of gives license to do when you're divorced was terrifying to me. Yeah. And I so often got in between my kids and my spouse because he would overreact and cause harm, that the idea of not being able to be that buffer was also, I couldn't imagine doing that. And so it felt to some extent like a better choice to stay in the abuse than to get out of it. And then there was still the question of what actually, how far can it go? Is it a bruise? Is it a push into the wall? Is it taking every single thing that you know about me and my personality, whatever, because we're doing seminary stuff together and using it as ammo against me, you know, to the point where I'm like, please don't share my personality or any of my whatever with him, because it becomes fodder for ammunition. So, you know, there was this whole idea, and consistently in our relationship, of if he felt attacked, then he would attack me, and that was justified. And so it might be a thing of, if I'm, you know, kind of coming around the corner and I step on his toe, I'm slammed into the refrigerator. And he's like, but I felt attacked. You stepped on my toe. And so talking about, and you know, I had a year of counseling. So there was this constant thing of like, okay, wait, hold on. Those aren't equal. Like those are, you know, and so, you know, once we finally got into our last bit of counseling, because we were in counseling constantly, we were in counseling almost our entire relationship. And if we weren't in counseling, we had mentor couples, and sometimes we had both. And sometimes we were in counseling together and separate. So for almost 9 years. So, you know, the idea that I needed to explain that to him and walk that through, but, you know, it was our last counselor who finally, you know, my ex turned to me at one point and said, I don't understand that. Like, just, can you help me? And I turned around and I started explaining, and my therapist was like, hold on. That's very kind and codependent of you, but he's an adult and he is not ignorant. He has a master's degree. And it was like this pause, because that had become my role, but it allowed me to be the problem. It allowed me to be the issue, because he could play dumb. And if I couldn't explain it enough, then it didn't make sense, rather than just, when you grab someone to the point of leaving bruises all over their arms, that's not okay.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Done. So it gave this opportunity for me to become the enemy, legitimately, for him in his head. It allowed him to create this arena of which, when he attacked me, he had a reason. He needed to create that reality. He needed to give himself a reason. Not to give himself a reason, but he needed to explain so that it could still fit within his belief system. So it's very heady. So to say, after all of that, that my sanity was solid, not so much. To say that my kids needed me to be present. They needed me to not lose my mind, was really what kept me getting up in the morning. I won't say I got dressed every day. I won't say I got a shower, but I got up because my kids needed me to get up. And I had grown up with a mother that was unpresent, that she had checked out of her life through drugs and alcohol and sleeping and lots of other things. And I did not want my kids to have that experience. They had in essence lost their home. They had lost a niece who had to leave because I could not keep her in the midst of everything going on. They had lost a sister. And so there were times that I would literally wake up crying. I would go to bed crying. I would wake up crying. You know, I don't have parents, so there was no mom showing up on my door. There was no grandparents. Like I don't have any of that. So it was me. There were some amazing friends that chose to stay with me during that time. If I had it to do again, which God help me, I pray never happens, I would ask them to stay longer. I didn't want to inconvenience anybody. I didn't want to ask them to come out of their life. Everybody had their own lives. And I understand that. But thinking back now, that mentality of, I've got it. I didn't have it. And for my older kids who needed the opportunity, you know, my 14-year-old son was with his sister when she bled out. And he's the one who called me and said, Mama, I think Anna's dying. For him to have a reference point for that and talk with me in the midst of my having just lost my marriage, had my husband cheat on me, had him attack me. What does that do with, we're going to be in ministry? We were actually vetted to go to Izmir, Turkey. And we're going to be working as missionaries per se. And I'm really glad that I didn't get assaulted in a Muslim country. So that was a grace and a blessing. However, my entire direction for life had just crashed. And then to lose my daughter, which was really my unspoken boundary with God. I was like, that's it. Don't do that. I'd lost my best friend in high school when I was 18. I'd lost my closest cousin when I was 18. I'd already had a lot of loss in my life. And that was the one that I was like, I don't know that we'll be friends. I don't know that I can handle that. The reality, though, is that if I want to see my daughter again, then I need to reconcile with God.
Wow.
And so it put me again in this tension. And so there was just, honestly, it really was, when you talk about like what grounded you, I don't know it's possible so much to be grounded in that, other than to say, I did not want my kids to lose somebody else.
Wow.
I did not want to add to their trauma, which is possible when you're hurt.
Yeah.
And I did not want to lose my mind. Really simply, I was like, I would like to not go insane. It would be great. There's things I regret. There's things a lot more with my older kids, because they, my older daughter moved home. She'd gone off for college. She graduated from college. She'd come home. Like, everybody huddled in. All of a sudden, it's like my little kids were in my room. Like, we were all like together. But that doesn't mean like it was warm and fuzzy. We were like together, and I'm mad at you. Like, why didn't you keep Anna home? Why did this happen? My older son really, I didn't disclose what had happened to my little kids. And I wasn't going to disclose to my older son because they loved this person who had assaulted me on a regular basis. And I did not want to add to their hurt. And so for a minute, he actually advocated. He was like, can't you guys work it out again? Can't you, whatever? And at that point, I had with my little girl, because she was only 4 at the time, she was like, Mommy has fish skin. And it was because I was black and blue from my neck to my ankles. And she was like, Mommy has fish skin. And I was like, yeah. And so, and there's court stuff going on, and there's lots of extraneous things that I don't even have words. And it was too much. It was too much. And our reactions, and I reacted. And I wish, if I could go back and do it again, I fought over things I shouldn't have fought over. If I had it to do all over again, I'd just be like, take it all. I don't care. Honestly, because the court did not support me. The court, honestly, in essence, kind of reprimanded me even for wanting to make sure my kids were safe. And I spent a buttload of money, and he got it anyway. So making sure that I'm safe, that my kids are safe, and being a safe person for them, including my older kids who had gone through this immense loss, and accepting my limits, was something I would love to say I would do better, because I would ask for more help, because I needed more help. And I didn't know how to inconvenience anybody to ask for that. And I did not have the normal. There were times that God brought strangers into my life. Like, when I was court-ordered to move, it took me a while. Like, I was almost incapacitated. I couldn't handle going into my daughter's room. I would just go in and bawl. It was too much. And, her ashes were on the floor because I didn't have the brain to process to deal with him. And I was brought into court. He filed, I think it was 8 different contempts against me. I was constantly in court. And, when the judge was like, I asked for a, what's it called? Where they give me an extension of time. I asked for an extension of time. And I was actually accused of leveraging my daughter's death to my benefits somehow. And so she denied it. So anyway, so there was just the reality of, I have to survive. I have to function. I don't have anywhere else to go. And so I have to get out. And what do I have to do today? And it's literally what do I have to do today, or the world might burn down, or like I might go to jail. And that threat, because he wanted payback. He had gone to jail. Now he wanted me to go to jail. And it wasn't until I was going to go to jail. And so his attorney asked for that on every single thing. There were times that my kids would come home with a concussion from him, and I had to give them back to him. The court system is not set up for the benefit of our kids. It's set up for the person who has the most affluence, influence, and money and resources wins. And when you've just been assaulted by this person, and you show up in court and you like stutter around them and you shake because it makes you nervous, you're the one who looks like you have an issue. They may understand it in the criminal court, but they don't in the family law court. So there's just some things that just the reality is it's inhumane. It's inhumane. And so you do the best that you can. It really is a day by day, because I would have lost my mind. I mean, when I tried to grasp of like, how do I survive this in 6 months? I literally feel like I'm going to lose my mind. And there were things, my faith community didn't really know how to deal with me. I was now a single mom. I was female. Sometimes single women are seen as a threat, and all of a sudden I'm like a threat to all the other men in the church because I might, tempt them somehow. And I had just come back from this intense 2-week trip with 10 guys. Like, I was the only like straight female on the trip. So those were my people. Those were my brothers. And I've got the pastor being like, no, we need you to not reach out to them. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. I'm supposed to reach out to the women who haven't connected with me to come deal with my assailant special forces husband who assaulted me? Okay, probably not going to happen. So, I mean, it was messy. It was just messy.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of that didn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of I'm still breathing, and really breaking down each day to what would be a success that day. I got my kids breakfast. I got them off to school. Bam, it's a whim.
Yes.
Literally, there were days that felt like overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
If I got a shower, we get a gold star. Fantastic. And just slowly, I mean, it took months. It took months for me not to be crying every day. It took months for me not to bite at people when they're like, it's going to get better. And I'm like, I'm sorry, my kid's still going to be dead in a week. What's going to be better? Like, there was no better in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can cushion that with saying it gets different.
I love that. Yeah.
It's not necessarily better, because to say that my life today without my girl is better smarts. I'm like, it's not. It's different. It's different. And my story's not done yet. It's not done yet. And my kid's story isn't done yet. And this isn't where I want to stay. And there were really good days. Actually, there were not really good days for a long time. But there started to be a little bit more light in my days. Mm-hmm. And then now we just talk about living in a happy sad. We talk about that. Honestly, in almost all of the happy moments, there is some sad. It's just a reality. Now, my kids' experience with their dad is very different because they don't do sad. You need to always be happy over there. So when my little kids would come back, it was very different. So my little kids and my big kids really didn't get to grieve together. And it created some dissonance. It created some anger, especially with my older son, when he found out, when he understood what all this man had done. When I actually had to tell him, because he started to feel he was being put in the middle. My ex was reaching out to him via text. My ex broke all kinds. Like, we had 2 protection orders for a minute, and he broke them constantly, but he's friends with the local police department, and he's done free training with them. And so they never would do anything. I'd have lists and lists, and I'd call the DA, and the DA would be like, I can't do anything unless you get the police to do something. And the police wouldn't do anything. They would just tell him, okay, you can't like shoulder check her at the gym. You think? Okay. I mean, it was a regular thing for a while of constant, like, wait a minute, he's not supposed to do this. I probably spent 2.5 years of my life going, wait a minute, this is what it says. He's not supposed to do this. Mm-hmm. Before I finally, it starts to sinking in, and it's still sinking in. I'm still like, hey, I didn't, I only got to talk to my kids once in 7 days, like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, or you just took all my parenting time. You don't get to do that. It really is a thing of, they do what they're going to do. They are going to play the system, and the system will play long. Mm-hmm. And it costs a crazy amount of money. And so what is it that you need to do to keep your sanity? What is it that you need to do to somewhat feel like you have your life back? Because as long as I have those kiddos, I am tied to my abuser, which I at times rail against, and I can't stand, and I want to be free. And even I'll just be honest, because I just saw somebody say document everything. I did. Just recently, just to give an example, at a conference hearing, the judge was like, I'm not reading any of that. She actually refused to read the order. I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know that was a thing, but it happened. Just took a 2-hour court session and said, I can deal with this in 30 minutes. Oh, and by the way, I'm not looking at exhibits. What? She's like, I'm just going to do testimony. I've got a professionally trained liar. Okay, great. And you're not in control of any of that. And so the time when I went and I filed an appeal and I spent $15,000 to appeal the craziness that I thought she had ordered, it ticked her off.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up ordering me to pay the appeal, even though they had been wrong in how they calculated child support.
Mm-hmm.
They had been wrong, but it made her mad. And so she put it back on me. And my appellant attorney missed details because his attorney actually left out. She was the one ordered to transcribe the long order of the court. And she left details out. And the Attorney Regulation Board of Colorado came back and I had to file a complaint. They said, yes, we see that. And they said, don't do that next time. You should do a better job. Wow. And all that was left out of my orders. Communication, that he was supposed to pay for those repairs that I didn't get done, which is why I had to spend 48 hours in jail, and pay his attorney fees. He's never paid my attorney fees. Not one single time. I've paid his. Where do we get our lives back to say, and I'm still figuring this out. I'm praying on a regular basis, just this whole, where do I stop allowing him to trigger my reaction to want to get even? Because I don't want to be him.
Right.
Where do I stop feeding into his attitude? I've got 2 talking parent messages right now where he's condescending to me and he's telling me he just took my kids. I haven't seen them since last Wednesday. Haven't talked to them. And that was my entire parenting time. So he also had them the week before. So it sounds ludicrous. And I am a fighter to my toes. I grew up backing down. First time I was suspended from school was for fighting a boy. Taking that into a relationship with a former SEAL was not real wise. I mean, I remember the first time, I think I was 6 weeks postpartum, and my ex threw me in the floor over something, and I popped back up, nose to nose, and felt the Holy Spirit be like, is this wise? And just what had been my norm and what had kept me alive as a kid has become at times not helpful as an adult. I fought over furniture because I thought, you can't come into our house and just take everything. I should have just given him the furniture. It cost me more in attorney fees. It cost me more in emotional pain to have a special master come into my house and sort through all my stuff. I didn't even know there was a person called a special master. I didn't even know what that was. But there is a person that the court orders to come into your house and sort your stuff for you. And this was after I had already given him everything he asked for, loaded up a truck. My friends loaded up a truck for him, and he had them drive it around to a church that was having a garage sale. And she still came to my house. Went through my daughter's stuff, my dead daughter's belongings. It was awesome. Wasn't worth it. I should have just given him whatever he wanted. And I hate that. I hate the injustice. I've been all over the world and pushed back and, studied how to be a leader with justice in my seminary degree. Like all this thing, like it goes against everything in me. And I'm still 5 years later trying to figure out, where do I just say, fine, just take it. It's just, or you know what? Okay, I'll see my kids at this time. Or, he's never allowed them to have a device. He's never allowed them to, it gets broken. It gets lost within minutes, like within the week. I want to be that person that my kids are safe with. And when I'm constantly letting him keep me tied up and triggered, I have had to deal with him over this court case. I had nightmares last night about the assault. Got up this morning, got 2 more messages from him. I could let it wreck my day. and let it rep my week. But that's not who I want to be. And I don't want to give him that control of my life. And it is up to me. It's what I choose to focus on. I had to choose to, I'm not doing the messages right now. I had to choose to get up and say, I'm not getting pulled into the drama. I'm not going to respond to the condescension. I don't have to. I don't have to. He's not standing here. I will deal with that later. Have breakfast and coffee, and I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to look at the mountains, and I'm not going to die. Because my bar got really, really low for a period of time. And that was the bar. Because I don't know how many of you are moms, but, you know, for the longest time, my saying was, it's just my job to keep them alive. Well, I didn't. I lost one. And I lost my younger two 50% of the time. So I got to live with that. And find, how do I still embrace joy? How do I still have opportunity to celebrate with my little kids? Because how we grieve is different. I always thought like grieving would like bring us all together. Like we had that moment where we all came together and it'd be like kumbaya, right? Like we'd all like shoulders, sweet.
Yeah.
Not the reality. We were like scratching and fighting and biting and like, you shouldn't be, we don't need to do Easter. Anna just died. And how could you do that? And, you know, I'm not, you know, we need to not do holidays ever again. And, you know, why did you let him do, and there's all this anger because we're hurting and we're in pain. And so we turn to bite at the people we know love us the most because they're there and we think they can take it. And as the mom, you get where you got some chunks of flesh coming out. It's rough. And then you got the court system and it's a lot. And you just start feeling like you're kind of a partial person. And the reality is, for a little bit, I was. For a little bit, my grounding was, how do I live through today? How do I just live through today? And some days I didn't want to. I really didn't want to. But I want to see my kid. Okay, now the bar's been raised. Now I want to see my kid. Yeah. And the only way to see my kid is to be good with God. All right, fine. So it may take a minute, but I'm like, fine. So it's like, all right, we got to be good, but we're going to work it out a minute because I'm pissed and I don't understand. And this is wrong. And I'm still in that place where I'm like, God, you're saying this outcome was what you wanted for me? Are you kidding me? What? How is that loving? How is that kind? I don't understand. But I'm still in the conversation. I'm still showing up. And that's really, I don't know that I have a whole lot more wisdom than continuing to show up the best that you can that day. And I don't know if I answered all your questions because you threw out 4.
Yes, I threw out 4 too. I'm so sorry. But no, I just
hold on. I'm like trying to be like, which one did I answer and how long did we go? And
no, it's all good. And I just feel like the things you're saying just is profound. Like it's deep. Some of the truth bombs that you've dropped, it's raw, it's authentic. And seeing so much of who you are in your heart is that you're a warrior at heart. Like you are a fighter for your kids. And I love that beauty of getting to say so many women just stop and give up, but you continue to fight for them, even if you only have them 50% of the time, because you know the depths of not having a mother who is present and there with them. And you are there fighting to give them that love and that stability that they need. And that's why they feel that safety to be themselves when they're with you, because you're the only safe place to pour that out. And I just think that's real authentic grief. It is questioning God. It's not a situation of, oh, I have all the cute right answers. And yes, me and God were always tight. There's times in my life where I have told Joy, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm a Christian today. So it's years ago. And that's normal part of grieving when you have lost your life and having lost all that you've lost, when things are stripped from you. It is to say, go to the person we know is safe, and that is God, and say, God, why has this happened? But that's Christianity. It's wrestling with God. It's wrestling with him. Continue to show up and say, God, speak to me. Here I am. And he will. And I think that's beautiful too. What you said it's not always a happy ending. We want in our trauma, sometimes we as Christians don't know how to deal with trauma too. We want to say it's going to be better. It's going to be glorious. It's going to be great. But sometimes it's not ever going to be okay. It's never going to be the best or the good after losing your child. And sometimes after losing the things that you've lost, there is no better, but it gets different. And sometimes that different is beautiful in and of itself. And there's beauty in it, in what we do have, in the gifts that we can delight and enjoy in. But there's still loss over what is gone too at the same time. And I think you articulated and brought us through the journey of what that's really like, to walk through the wrestling of so much grief, so much loss, and then to say, you know what, I'm going to get up and fight every single day. I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to get up and fight for my kids, fight for myself, and fight for others. And that's,
I'm not going to lie, it's exhausting. But what I don't want to lose sight of the fact that my story's not done. And actually, I have that tattooed on my back in Latin. My daughter Latin was the only language she would learn because she didn't have to speak it out loud. So she gloriously failed Spanish twice and finally was like, can I just do Latin? I was like, okay, fine. So, in Latin, I have on my back that my soul was forged in fire. My story is not finished. And that's the reality. I don't know what the future holds. I live in a present reality that is uncertain. And that is always true. And we lose sight of that, particularly as Americans, because we're not used to, we're not subjugated to being shelled by our neighboring country. We have some privilege of being the 1% of the world, even if we're receiving food stamps and we still have a home and electricity and water, like we're still part of the 1%. And that's hard to swallow sometimes. And yet my story is not done. What we're going through and my experience with my kids now is different than what it was at 4 and 6 when I was first assaulted. What it's going to be like when they're 14 and 16, that'll be different. We live in this constant state of where if we're growing, we should be growing. We should be, if we're living, if we're becoming more of who we are, if we're growing in our understanding of who God is, which in our humanity is messy, then we have hope. And that is what, in the midst, I might rail and cuss and throw a fit on the floor and all of that. But unless I just don't get up, I'm not beat yet. It's not won yet. It's not done yet. There's still hope. And so determining where I'm going to expend my energy and what's going to be life-giving. And in the beginning, we fight over everything because it's all wrong. Like from the assault or from the abuse to now you're taking my kids. Now, it's all wrong. None of it was God's heart for us. It's all in opposition to what we see in the Garden of Eden with God and all this provision and this safety and this communion. And there wasn't this gender jockeying and there wasn't sexism and there wasn't it was glorious. Mm-hmm. And that being God's heart for us. We're far from that reality. I mean, I deal with my abuser way more than I ever thought I would have to when I filed for a divorce. And the amount of injustice continues. It continues to go on. I don't know what of that injustice will be righted this side of heaven. I don't know. That's not my hope. I don't want to become someone out of response of who he is. That's what I lose. When I lose myself and who I am, and I lower and I allow myself to be brought to something that I don't respect, that's when I'm losing. And that's what we really have to safeguard. It's what mom do I want to be? Okay, well, I don't get to be that mom now that has my kids all the time. That's just the reality. I don't get that. So what does my showing up the best possible way I can as a mom today look like? And some days I drop the ball because some days they come home and they're already arguing with me about something their dad told them that he shouldn't have told them. So I'm dealing with the injustice as soon as it walks through my door, and it triggers me. I want to be like, tell your daddy to go kiss my, and that's not helpful. They don't need that.
Yes.
So continuing to bring it to the thing of they love their dad and they get to love their dad. And that will be their story that they get to wrestle with them and God. It's not my job to shine the spotlight on him. It's God's job. And the more energy I spend trying to shine the spotlight to say, hey, look, he's screwing up, he's lying, look, he's cheating, look. That's energy I'm taking away from my healing and from who my kids need me to be. And I'll be honest, I've got caught in that trap because it's real. And there was probation, and I'm like, he's breaking his probation. Let me get a PI, let me all this kind of stuff. And I don't know that was wrong. I don't know. But I do know that where I'm at right now, I'm kind of a place of like, what's my responsibility in this? And my responsibility is me. My responsibility is how I respond, who I am, and that I maintain who Christ has called me to be. And it's hard when you have your own personal terrorist. It's hard when you have your own personal, whatever you want to call them. And sometimes I look for nicer words. But even that, to let negative energy go out toward them, to really where it's like, okay, how do I take back me and create boundaries to fence them off so that their influence, their junk, their shadows, all that kind of stuff, we do our best to not engage it. And I think that's one of the hardest things is to not engage. And particularly if you're dealing with a narcissist, it's really hard to just not engage. Don't feed it. And that's so hard. It's so hard because we want to. And it's particularly as Americans, we're told like, well, fight back. We're supposed to stand up for what you believe in, all these kind of things. And all that's true. And if it takes over your life, how are you healing? Are you getting to heal? I mean, for a while, I was having to tell my story to somebody almost every day. And it's not healing. But it's also why I can tell you my story and talk about my kid dying in a car crash and bleeding out on the side of the road without losing because I did. I lost my mind. Like I lost it. I cried and I bawled for months because I talked about it so much. But our story is part of who we are. And it tells where we've come from, but it doesn't tell where we're staying.
Wow.
So this isn't the end of my story. Hopefully in 5 years, if we do this again, I'll be in a much better space.
Yes.
I'm not in court. I hope I've paid off all my court attorney debt. I hope that my kids are in great spaces and I have great relationship with them. And I don't even know what's going on with him. I look forward to the day that he doesn't even enter the periphery of my brain in any way. And where I am truly able to say, I wish you well and whatever God wants for you. And it's not with and I hope it's X, Y, and Z. I really do, because I don't want that hook in me. I don't want that hook in my soul of I would rain down fire from heaven on you and all all that. I don't want to be that person. That's not who I am. No, okay, let me take that back. It is who I am in a moment, sometimes.
Me too.
I have that moment. but I don't want that on my soul. I don't want to be the ones to tell my kids. If I could, I would rain fire down on your daddy. God knows I would. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, I hope in 5 years, I hope maybe it doesn't even take that long. I can get where I can truly say, I wish you well. And whatever God has for you. And I mean it. I mean it. There's no spit at the end. And I'm not there yet. So my story's not finished.
Yes. Wow. That was so good. And I love what you said. All of that was deep and profound. And I hope that was encouraging to other women too, to press forward that we're responsible for our own healing and like how to live in this, but yet take responsibility for ourselves and move forward. And I just thought that, wow, I want to go back and listen to that again. That was just really, really powerful after all you've been through to, yes. And as Joel is saying here, we applaud you for your strength. It's incredible what you were doing. And now you're giving back to other women and walking with them through this process. And I think that's really beautiful when it comes full circle. And you're like, I want to give back. I want to help people move forward because you can.
I don't want to give the enemy more of my life in any way, form, or fashion if I can help it. So I do not want to become complicit in my own trauma. And sometimes that's hard. It's hard. We can go running after fixing it and justice and wanting to make them pay to our own detriment.
Yes.
Our own healing is not worth it. Like, let me take that back. That's true. Our own healing is worth it. Giving that away for them, and it's not, that's not our job. And there's a relief to that. It's like not giving your kids too much when they're too little. God doesn't ask us to do that because then we got to live with it. God says, I got it. I got it. I will dish out what needs to be dished out when it needs to be dished out. You may never see it. However, who do you want to be? Who do you want? What do you want your life to look like? And that's where I want to spend my time. I don't want to spend it running after somebody else's getting theirs. So.
Wow. I love that. That's a true survivor mentality. A true mentality of overcoming is when you can focus on yours and moving yours, what you can control, and moving forward with that. And I think that is very courageous of you. And I appreciate you sharing today. There's so many more questions. I'm like, oh, I have so many more things I want to dive into. Maybe we need to do a second one.
That'll be fine. I'm honored to get to be here. There's so much I didn't know going into this. There's so much that I wish. Well, who knows if you'd even listen in the moment when I always say when the world fell on my head. And there were like moments where like big chunks fell on my head, and it was until just the whole thing came down.
Mm-hmm.
And it really did feel like that. And, I wish to God that there had been somebody who was able to say, is it worth it? Is your living room furniture worth it? Is fighting over $75,000 in your house worth it? At the time, it's like, hell yeah, it's worth it. It's $75,000. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
$125,000 later in legal fees and the $75,000 that he got anyway, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So for those of us who are fighters, and I just grew up, it was stand up or we're going to walk over you.
Mm-hmm.
It is very hard in those moments to keep perspective of what really matters. Even if it was like, yeah, fine, take the house, take it. Instead of being drugged back into all the trauma, dealing with them over and over and over and over and over again. But I didn't know that. I did not know that. I thought it could be fair. I thought we just need to bring truth to light. I thought, and maybe that could be God's plan at some time, but it wasn't in my story. I don't know that that'll be true in everybody else's story, but in my story, that wasn't true.
Anybody's story. I'll put that right there.
It's still not true in my story. I mean, I still have the judge just say, I don't know why you spent money on this. I'm going to not even read it. And I'm like, how is that legal? Like, okay. All right. I mean, there's so many cases where our judges, our attorneys, there is no accountability. Well, I don't have the energy to make it my job for there to be accountability. I don't have that influence or that power. Mm-hmm. So what can we do? What can we influence? And really the ultimate thing is I can just control me. And yes, I get knocked off balance when I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. And your job is to negotiate what is right. But when you go back to it, but none of it's right. Like this whole thing of like all this that's happened, none of it falls within God's design for us as we see in Eden. So I'm like, I don't know, God, I just can have hope that tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow will be different. 5 years from now, I won't be dealing with as much BS in court. And part of that is up to me. of what do I want to fight over. And I'm figuring out that a lot of it's not worth messing with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's not my kids, if it's not my sanity, if it's not my own personal protection, a lot of the stuff, I should just let it go because I end up paying for it anyway.
Yeah. Wow.
So
I agree with you. I've seen women get caught in this personally, like where they're just fighting and fighting, and you're just like, you got to let this go. Like, it's not worth the fight. I mean, now for your kids, it's worth it. But when it comes to
right.
material possessions of I want more money or I feel entitled to this, it's not worth the fight usually. And so I love what you're saying is that this life is temporal, and the temporal things sometimes, I mean, I'm not saying that's easy and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do myself. Sometimes we just have to let go to realize what's eternal, and the ones that are eternal are worth fighting over, and that's our children's souls and their hearts and their lives and our own insanity and our own heart and life. But the temporal things, they won't be here at the end of time, but our children will, and that is definitely what we're fighting for. So I love that you're pointing that out because it's not something we've discussed a lot before. And I think women, and I think too, I'm sorry, so many questions here. I'm going into when you go through trauma in life, especially at an early age, you learn to survive by fighting, and that nature is within you. And it takes, I know for me, when I'm triggered, my first thought is, I'll fight. I'm going to fight it. And it's that you have to take that step back. And I love what you're pulling out, is speaking to me so much of saying, yes, that's a normal trauma mechanism within me to fight because that's how you survive. But put that energy into fighting for myself, my own sanity, and my children, and not taking on battles that are just going to further cause me more harm. And that's hard to not fight. It takes everything within you sometimes to say, let it go.
Well, and especially when we've been wounded, when we've been treated unfair, you know, in my case, it was like, wait a minute, you've broken your vows, you've lied, you're going out to speak to the public about whoever you were saying you are, you've cheated with these women, now you've physically assaulted me. You know, it felt like you've already taken so much. You don't get this too. But
yes,
because of the system that we're in, I'm in the state of Colorado. I would not advise you to get divorced in Colorado.
Yeah.
Ever as a female. Move. Because of where I am. Yeah. And he gets, you know, as much, and whoever has the most money and whoever has the most energy, and it isn't fair. It's not fair. And it feels like in some of it, it's like, well, yeah, but I can fight for at least part of it to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just not fair. And that is so hard, especially with a person who has like an inner, like I have a hard sense of justice. And
yes,
yeah, it's like
terminate you.
not okay.
Yeah.
Now looking back, it's like, okay, well, it's going to double the injustice when he gets it anyway, and you got to pay for your fight. Because there's constantly over and over, and actually I just did this. And so I'm not saying, like, this isn't speaking out of, oh, I got this all straight. No. This is speaking out of, I was stupid in debt because I'm like, how can you empty our house? Like, our kids still live here. How can you take our house? Like, all of the kids still live here. Like, what? Like, so many things that I just thought, like, that's not right. And we have these perceptions in our heads of like the court system that's going to defend the victim, and that you're the mom, and all these things that are going to go for you. And that's just not been my experience, nor has it been any of the mom's experience, especially if it's a military spouse that I'm aware of in my area. I've heard of men actually having a lot better experiences, but when we look at what men often ask for, and unless you're dealing with somebody like we're dealing with, oftentimes they're asked, like they assume based on stereotype of like, oh, well, I'm not going to get all that. So when it all gets thrown at them, they're like, oh, because the decent guys, they're not out there trying to move their spouse and their wife, or their wife and their kids out of the house and dislodge them and throw everything into uncertainty. Those guys aren't trying to do that. But the ones that don't care and they just want to win, the court wants to help them win. Oh. And in some of those things, it's not worth the win. and especially what's the cost going to be? So it was like, okay, well, first it was going to be the household furniture, then it was going to be the house. Now it's all of that and $150,000 in debt. Good job. And that's what eats my lunch. Like, there are just these regrets. And if I can save anybody to just say, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. You know what? It's okay if you don't have furniture for a couple months. The kids will have fun. They'll love it. You know, like, it just really figuring out where, because then that ties at you, because then, okay, it's like, okay, I lost, you know, but now it's like, now I got that debt. Now, okay. And then it's like, okay, well, now I can't take on my kids on this vacation because I have $150,000 worth of debt. And they still won. So just figuring out, kind of getting it really down to what's really important to you. I want to be able to talk to my kids. I want to know my kids are safe. I want to know if they're sick. I don't want to lose my time with my kids. You know, those are those basic things. And then you find, and if I could save somebody some money and some heartache, because it really, I mean, it really hurts your feelings when not only did you lose, but you lose and you're sunk in debt, because I always thought they would order court fees. Like, if you were a stay-at-home mom, whatever, I just thought they'd have to pay the court fees. Oh, no. No. I've always had to pay my own court fees. And his attorney doesn't even charge him because she gives him a military rate. And she's a former military kid. So he gets a pass. So he actually has called my attorney and drove up attorney fees on my account that I had to pay for. What? So really, really knowing where your energy is worth it. Because there's some things that, looking back over this shit show, I'm like, that wasn't worth it. You should have saved your money. But I didn't know. And then the people who were all just like, give it to Jesus. Is Jesus going to show up for court for me? Because if he would, that'd be great. Is Jesus going to show up and put my kids in the bath and get them to bed so I can go cry and have a glass of wine? That would be great. So I couldn't process those quip little terms. That was the one that got to me the most. Give it to Jesus. I go up there, they'd be like, hands your hands out. Give it to Jesus. Okay. Well, I got to be at court at 10 o'clock in the morning. They'll issue a bench warrant if I'm not there. So what's that? Please tell me. So, I mean, there's just the reality of we live in a fallen world, and it sucks. It sucks. And sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. And a lot of time it's not fair. Where can I still thrive? And I'm still going to get at, and I'm going to do my best to show up for my kids and myself and still choose to be the person that I want to be. And I'm still getting back on my feet. I mean, and he's good to go. 2 new cars. He's already remarried right after, you know, whatever. He's good to go. He looks great. And it's hard to still be on this side going, okay, God, well, I guess I'm not doing the pastor thing. Didn't work out real well. So, I mean, really, it's hard, and it stays hard because I don't just live in my own reality. I live in a reality that involves other people I care about, and I want it to be real and true, and I want to be real and true, and it's messy. So if any of my story can help save anybody any amount of money or heartache, I'm all for it.
Yes. No, I appreciate that so much. And this is just, so I was saying, this is just real and authentic. And I think so many times we try to give all the right answers and say all the right things, but this is reality. This is what real walking through this looks like. It's not always there's a bright side in the ending. You know, your story is not over with yet, but the day-to-day sometimes is still really, really hard. And I think you've given us a glimpse for women to feel that are there in the thick of it, that they're not alone, and they can get up and they can control themselves and what to fight for and what to let go of. And I think that was really helpful. Just so many different things that you said, so many powerful truth bombs. We're just like, wow, that's so true. And it's so hard, like you said, to live with injustice. I hate injustice with every ounce of my being. I was talking to Joy last night, and I was like, I struggle so bad with God. Why are these people professing the name of Jesus and getting away with it? Why are you not striking them dead? Where are you, God? And I think that something she said to me is that there's a verse in Psalms that says their day is coming. Their days are numbered. And while it seems they are getting away with this, God sees. He sees every minute thing. He sees the desires of their heart. He sees their wickedness. He sees your pleas. He sees your cries. He numbers them. And he says that vengeance is mine. And what that looks like, I don't know. But we can trust a God that is good and loving, that he will do what he says he does. And if it's not till the throne, hey, I look forward to that day, the truth all coming out and exposed. And before Jesus, I mean, I know I'm going to have my own stuff in my own life, but I'm going to be like, thank you, God, you can finally see who these people are, and that they're no longer in the new heaven, new earth, able to deceive. And we're able to go into our place of rest, of saying, well done, thy good and faithful servant. And I look at you and I think that, wow, you've been faithful through.
But I don't want to wait until I don't want to give him control over my happiness now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm in charge of my happiness. And honestly, part of living, of just living, of being able to be in this space is, David talks about believing that he would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I would not be honest if I just said that my entire hope is I'm waiting for, like the cupcake and the celebration when I get to heaven. I want to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And I am not letting him be in charge. I'm not letting my abuser be in charge of my happiness. And so my happiness is not going to be contingent on him. And so even in those moments where the world had fallen on my head, and my older daughter and I struggled with this because she was really close to her sister, and it really wrecked her. And she really felt like the world was void of joy, period. Like that all of it was gone and it should never exist again. But because I still had my two little kids, it was like, wait, no, like so for one, they went to their dads and it was all a happy day. And you're not ever supposed to be sad. But they're being, when we understand real pain, it also gives us an immense appreciation of joy. And being able to find beauty, to find joy in the simple things. A great cup of coffee that is warm in your hand and comforts your senses. At times, that was the highlight of my day. But if I did not find the grace in that moment, God didn't have to give me taste buds that I could tell what was salty and sweet and all that kind of stuff. It could just be like, this is just food. He didn't have to give me a factory system that's like, okay, this smells amazing. Like, and to just be able to just savor. Sometimes we're looking at the big things, and sometimes the big things, it's out of our grasp for the moment, or sometimes it just feels so far away. But not making my happiness, my joy, my peace contingent on what's happening with my abuser, the injustice, the unfairness, the fact that it's still going on, the fact that I'm still not where I want to be. Being able to look outside and say, Pikes Peak looks glorious, and I'm going to enjoy the summer breeze, and being grateful, which that smarted to my oldest daughter. She would get livid at me. And it took her a long time, because gratitude and being able to be grateful for those simple graces, those small breaths of life that say that hydrangea bush smells amazing. And I'm going to be grateful for it. And I'm going to praise God for the moment. The rest of my life may be going to hell in a handbasket, but that hydrangea bush smells amazing. And I'm going to sit here and enjoy it with my cup of coffee, and the world be damned. And that is where I am going to survive and have peace, because the grace of this moment is going to help me deal with that fire. It's going to help me deal with all of this injustice. It's the simple. It's not that I got to go to Hawaii on vacation, because I haven't ever got to do that. It's I got a great cup of, I'm going to have an amazing glass of wine with a friend, and we're going to not let our whole conversation be about the people in our lives that we don't ever want to see again. We're going to actually talk about what's life-giving and what we're looking forward to in the future we're excited about, that has nothing to do with our terrorists. We're actually going to not stay in this puddle of muck And we're going to look for those glimmers, those brief glimpses of grace, because if we don't, we'll get swallowed by the darkness. We have to have those brief moments of grace and of light so we can stay alive when things they're just dark. It's just dark. I mean, for years when people are like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm not dead. That's a pretty safe answer because I value being honest. Mm-hmm. And people don't really want to know anyway. So sometimes I'm like, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
You really don't want to know how I'm doing, but I'm not dead. So therefore, there's still hope for my story because I'm not dead yet. When I'm dead, that'll be done, but I'm not dead yet. So today, I'm going to find those glimpses of grace and light in the midst of the darkness that is going to help me survive until I get to the other side. And I don't know how long that's going to take. So I got to savor every single moment offered to me, whether it's the hug of a friend, whether it's a walk on a glorious day, all of it. I got to see it because there's a lot of dark. There's a lot of dark. I don't want to miss the moments of light because I don't think I'll survive if I do.
Wow. That gives me a lot of encouragement myself. And I'm just all that in. I love your rawness and authenticity. I love it so much. It's just beautiful. And I'm just like, wow, it's so good. And it encourages me. I'm like, I'm going to go find the glimmer and go taste some really good, good energy.
You know, Edith Strauss, I lead this experience where it's like basically shut up and come away and be with God because we always got so much to say. And I'm like, could you just be quiet for a minute? Like, I'm sure he loves that. Could we just be quiet for a minute? But it's a sensory experience of like being gracious, free choice. And we use a strawberry and really sitting with as you bite into the strawberry and relishing every single moment, engaging with all of these senses that God has extravagantly lavished on us to where it doesn't matter if I am worried about paying my mortgage, if I'm ashamed for being on food stamps, if I can't find a job, or if whatever happens in the midst of this messy, I can generally afford a strawberry. And I can sit there and let it roll over my palate. And I can sit with the sweetness. And I can let it be a glorious moment of worship and healing. And it's tangible and it's graspable for pretty much anyone. And I think those are the things that are really important because some things when people are talking about like, I'm going to go do a spa day. I'm like, well, happy for you. I can't freaking afford a spa day. I'm worrying about how to cover my bills next month. Are you kidding me? I don't get alimony and my ex pays next to nothing because he continually is not honest about his income. So I'm like, none of those things, those are all contingent on external factors. What I can control are these little grasps of the smell of fresh mown grass, for goodness sake. I mean, there's so many opportunities to be grateful and to savor if we can, because it gets dark. It gets really dark. And when I say there were weeks where my highlight was my cup of coffee, and probably too many nights. It was a glass of wine at the end of the night. Definitely probably too many nights. But those were my bookends.
Right.
And if somebody had been like, what was good about your day? That would have been it. And the rest would have been like, that is like horror story. Like that sounds like a really bad movie I don't want to be a part of. I'm like, yeah, I know. Thank you. Praise Jesus. I need to go have a cup of coffee. I mean, it really does have to be those moments because I am real with God. I do have those moments where I'm like, this sucks. And I don't like it. And I don't know what you're doing. And I don't agree. And I'll be really glad when it gets explained to me. We're going to have a lot of questions when I get to wherever we get. But I cannot wait until heaven to experience the goodness of God. And there is so much goodness lavished on us every day. If we, even in the midst of our personal hells, I mean, it's just stopping giving ourselves permission to sit with it for a minute. Whether it's the sweet hand of a child that kept you up all night, reaching over and being like, I love you. Or I know one of mine was 3:00 in the morning, my little girl touching my face. I have PTSD. If you touch my face in the middle of the night, I am wide. I'm like, smack you.
Yeah.
I mean, because then I'll be like, and she's like, I'm sorry, Mommy. I love you. I just woke up and you were pretty. And I'm like, okay, Lord have mercy. Okay, I might as well get up. Yeah. I'm going back to sleep again. I mean, it is taking that time of like, okay, but that was sweet. That was really, it was a grace. It was light in the midst of darkness. I mean, we got to see those because there's a lot of dark. There's a lot of dark, but there's graces every day. There's those moments. You just got to see them. And they keep us alive in the darkness.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I love what somebody's saying here is they hear you're saying it's not about what you can't do, but it's about what you can't do. I thought that was very true.
Because there's a lot we can't do.
Yes.
And if we focus on that, I'm going to go get in bed and I'm not going to wear makeup and I'm not going to eat. I'm just going to stay in bed and I'm going to pull the covers over my head because there's so much I can't do. And there are mornings that I wake up and that's what hits my head. Or honestly, I dreamed about it all night long. What can we do? I can get up. Sometimes the first thing I do is walk outside. I'm a sunshine person. I'm sunshine dependent. I'm in a much better space with me and Jesus if there's just sunshine.
Yeah.
Colorado.
Yes. Correct. Sunshine happens.
It's free. I can go see it in the sunshine and it's free. I can lay on the concrete and my neighbors can think I'm crazy. And you know what? Maybe just a little bit off, just smudge over a little bit and probably, but I'm going to lay in the sunshine for right now. And I might even have a popsicle. It's just what is within we give away our power so much. We give away, like my life was tied up with this person and it all went to hell in a handbasket. And I was supposed to be a good mom and my kid died. So does that mean I'm not a good mom? There's all these things that are all around us that we build our identities on that we have no control over. Like what I do for a living, who I love, who loves me, who I raise, what I create or don't. All of it. And yet we were told that we have immense value and we were at our most peaceful when we had nothing. It's like we came into this world with nothing and we were of immeasurable value. And yet we continually base our value on all of these things. And let me tell you, I don't have this. This is not, I haven't gotten it all down in me. I still have to tell myself this on a regular basis because I still have a hard time getting it that I need to earn, like that I've screwed up, that I've somehow failed and all these kind of things. I mean, you're talking to a seminarian. So I have a theology degree and I'm twice divorced. What are you going to do with that? Exactly. I mean, like my marketability is like not so much. So, and then if you get into the conversation of why I'm twice divorced, then they're even like, yeah, we believe in grace, but that's a lot. That's a lot. You want to go do our counseling stuff, but that's a lot of trauma. Really kind of rather that be kind of left out there, it's just messy. And we're judged all the time on our experiences, what we do, what we don't do, whatever. Nothing we can do about it. Nothing we can do about it. All we can do is grasp what is offered to us today. And it may not be what we want. When I had to move, I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to spontaneously combust from stress because nobody that I thought could show up. Nobody I generally counted on would be there. I didn't have hardly any time. And I had to pack my deceased daughter's bedroom. And I just thought, I'm not going to make it. And I had strangers show up to help me move. Like I had people who came for a garage sale who were like, hey, you got everything good? You're ready to go? And I literally was like, no, I don't. We may still be here. The police may arrive to help me move. And she's like, oh, I can help you come move. Like just being real, like being authentic and telling people, no, I need help. I need help. And because as much as people are like, God bless you. Okay, God can bless me, but you can help. Like God may bless me because you show up to help. Like you want to help pack? You want to help watch a kid so I can apply for jobs? You want to, and like we can tangibly help each other, but we also have to be honest. We have to be honest and we have to say, no, I don't have it. I really don't. Rather than constantly wanting to look like I got my shit together. FYI, I don't. Some days are better. Some days I do really good. And if I have a lot of makeup on and I look really good, that probably is a really bad day. That's probably a really bad day because I'm really covering it all up. Mm-hmm. So if I want to show up and put on a good face. But if I'm being real, I mean, Priscilla, who works with Call to Peace, she was organizing friends to help me move from Virginia who were like, I have friends that are from Arkansas or whatever, and they're going to be in Colorado. And it was like this across country. Joey was reaching out to her friend like in Michigan. I mean, I was like, I had friends. They just weren't in the state with me. So I'm like, but you know what? We moved. I got moved. There are things that I probably will never find, but it happened and I didn't die. And God blessed me with a space that has no memories here with my abuser. And it's my space. And there's no man on my title. And it's fantastic. And I don't have to argue about how I decorate or ask permission for what color I paint a wall. It's glorious. It's fantastic. So, I mean, there is good to come. There is good to come. And that's, we have to be intentional to see it so we can survive what's not good. So, because there is a lot of good. There's a lot of good. Even in the midst of the crap show, there's still a lot of good. It's just hard to see it in the midst of all of it. There are days that you may not see it, but that's okay. You can see it tomorrow. You can see it next week.
I love your comments. You're like, you can see it tomorrow. And I'm like, okay.
Because you know, I've been there. I've been there and they're like, the kids are not here. I've been a mom forever. I do not know what to do with myself. This is weird. This is weird. Nobody is demanding anything. Nobody is like, where's breakfast? Where's whatever? I don't know what to do with myself. I need to get a dog. It took me days to be like, why would I get dressed? I'm not going to see anybody.
Yes.
That's good as to come. There will be things you wanted to get dressed for. There will be, just have grace with yourself. You're worth it.
I love it. I want to send that out to everybody. The grace for yourself. You're worth it. That is beautiful. And this has been such a good conversation today. I feel like we've really covered a lot of the authentic journey. And I feel like you've given a lot of people hope of how to find glimmers, as we call them a lot of times, in the midst, how to find the good. How do you balance yourself? What does this really look like authentically? And I appreciate just your raw, honest vulnerability. That's really brave and courageous. And I admire and respect you a lot. So you're truly an amazing woman of God. And so thank you so much for sharing today. And I will leave your contact in the comments below. If you want to reach out, she has a blog where she's written some more great, wonderful writer stories, and you can reach out to her for questions and connect with her. Maybe you really connect with parts of her story. And I would love to encourage you just to reach out and contact her. So I will leave her contact information below in the comments. So
it's great to meet with all of you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'm glad you could come. We'll have to have you back soon.
Absolutely. All right. You all have a great day.